inflammation is technically, in terms of like body process, inflammation is the root of every symptom, illness, or disease. Acute inflammation helps us heal. So if we have a cut and there's a little bit of redness, or like if you rolled your ankle and it's a little swollen, that lasts for a short period of time, that's acute inflammation that is helping us heal.
Yeah.
Chronic inflammation is where we end up in this disease state. Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm Jenn Trepeck, your host and health coach, here with you every week for Wellness Without the Weirdness. I have a new voice for all of you joining me today. Leslie Boyce is here. She is the host of the Fitness of Business podcast. And Leslie, welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries.
Thank you. You know, that intro made me think that I should somehow use voice. There's something to that. So
yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got to go work on my marketing plan. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited because, fill everybody in. We had a wonderful conversation over on the Fitness of Business.
We did.
And now you're joining us here, which is so fun.
Yeah. And I feel like, we were prepared to talk about certain things on my show, and we went 14 directions that were not planned for. And that's actually kind of what I loved about it. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody, when you finish listening, pop over to the Fitness of Business. Find us over there too.
Please.
And so today we're talking about what I call highly preventable diseases, which basically means diseases you don't have to get, and blood markers you can move. Because I feel like when we go to a doctor, their solution is, well, here's the medication that's going to change the blood work. And the other side of that is, I feel like maybe not all of our Salad with a Side of Fries listeners, because you're here after all, yet a lot of people, I think, delay making changes or do less until that blood work shows something or until their doctor says something.
Yeah. Well, I think there's also my own personal experience is that I tend to look at blood work and say, well, wait a second. It shows that I'm doing all the things right, but I'm unhappy with X, Y, and Z. And so I think it can work both ways. The blood work is essential, but it's also only part of the story. They're all important. So it's just what comes first.
So true. And I think sometimes maybe to that point too, the blood work can be a lagging indicator. We feel something before it shows up.
Yeah.
And by the way, your experience and your story is part of why I'm so glad you're here for this, because you have experience in the fitness business and the wellness world. And then at the same time, your own story, so many of us. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Before we get too far into it, we have to talk about the Happy Healthy Hub. So friends, are you a member of the Happy Healthy Hub? Because our members this week are getting a recipe that is perfect for July 4th and really this whole season. If you love potato salad, this is dill pickle potato salad.
I love all these things.
Right. So it is delicious. It hits the spot for the summer season. Plus, it's generally a better for you potato salad, obviously, since I'm sending it because I only send you guys better for you recipes. So if you want this one, be sure you're a member of the Happy Healthy Hub. You'll go to asaladwithasideoffries.com/membership for just $12 a month. Or by the way, you can prepay the whole year and you get 2 months free. So $120 for the year. What a bargain. You get weekly recipes, curated articles, discounts from me and my partners, expert interview episodes in full video, including some behind the scenes pieces, access to the community board where we can interact, ask and answer questions, and so much more. So it really is the next best thing to working with me as your coach. So if you're ready to level up your health, support this podcast so we can keep doing this every week, go to asaladwithasideofries.com/membership, or there's a link in the episode notes below because that's a lot easier. Once you're there, you're going to click subscribe now. Follow the prompts to enter your payment info, create your login to access the hub and all of your benefits. And then, of course, this week's recipe is for the dill pickle potato salad. I know. I'm like, I kind of want to make it now, like place a grocery order and
I remember when they came out with dill pickle flavored potato chips.
Yes.
Ooh, I can't believe I got that all out in one take. And I was like, how good could that be? And it turns out really good.
There's a movie theater by me here that does dill pickle popcorn.
Yes, I've actually seen that in bags at Whole Foods or Sprouts or something. And yes, delicious. It's just salt. Like, give me all the salt. And like, what's
salt and vinegar, you know?
Well, actually, several things can go wrong. And I think we'll get to that.
Totally. So I started, as I was putting my notes together for this, I was thinking sort of like the most common diseases, which tend to be heart disease, metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes, and cancer. Those seem to be, I think, the most common or sort of biggest. And then as I was thinking about like how we cover this, I think a big piece at the jump is for us to sort of review a little bit of genetics versus lifestyle. Because a lot of times people will say, oh, well, high blood pressure runs in my family, or high cholesterol runs in my family. And we tend to forget that what also runs in our family is lifestyle choices.
I was just going to say habits.
Yes. Like we learn how to live our lives, those habits, like you said, from our family. And so we assume that if they have it, that it's a genetic piece. And most of the time, it's not necessarily. And then that sort of brings up this conversation of epigenetics. So if you want more on this, we did a nutrition nugget, and that was years ago on epigenetics, and we'll link to it in the episode notes. But epigenetics is sort of the interplay between our genes and our lifestyle. And it's essentially showing that our lifestyle can turn up or turn down the volume on different genes. So even if something does genetically predispose you, it's also not a 100% thing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So many things just came up as you were talking through that. And okay, this may be a bit roundabout, but I'm thinking about like, I talk about this on my show a lot. I have a daughter who's 5, and she has always been very intense emotions, like big outbursts, highs and lows. And very early on, she started to show signs of giftedness, and she's a very early reader and stuff. So anyway, we ended up having her tested. And along with the assessment results of, yes, in fact, she does test highly gifted, I was asking the therapist, like, well, she's also like really, really, she's hard. She's just really intense. And the therapist was like, oh, well, yeah, that's like usually comes along with the giftedness because they develop so quickly, you know, they advance so much intellectually that the emotional side is often sort of lagging. So the reason I bring this up is because it feels like that information just gave us an opportunity to understand how to approach emotions with her and how to support her best. But without the information, like, you know, the blood work, I think we would have, and we were kind of, I guess, resorting to just like, I think we're doing the best parenting we can and we're being empathetic and all of that. But it turns out like she's actually wired differently. But there are ways to improve the circumstances for everybody and the relationship for everybody. So I just think like there are a lot of parallels between like, this is like, is it environmental?
Yes.
Is it nature versus nurture? It's all of it. But like, you got to do the work to figure out that balance.
Absolutely. And I did an episode years ago. I guess it wasn't that many years ago, but everybody is pre-diabetic unless. And it's kind of the same thing because if we let the default happen around us and to us,
yeah,
the progression is to type 2 diabetes, is to cardiovascular disease, is to all of these things. And to your point, we can reclaim that nurture.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the default, but it's intentional.
Right. Like, would it taste better to eat cupcakes for every single meal? Like, sure. I mean,
I'm sitting here going, maybe, I guess, for like a little while, but
that's okay. Like, think about being a 5-year-old.
Right.
Like, you know, so like, yeah, the food that's around and available and readily available certainly is designed to taste good and to be more accessible and more affordable and all of that, but without some real intentionality behind what you choose to eat or what you choose to put on your kids' plates. I mean, it takes constant diligence.
Yes. And so I want to bring that conversation so that it doesn't feel like climbing Mount Everest for us to create a lifestyle that prevents disease.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think it's important for us to look at some of the most common diseases and the lifestyle factors that contribute.
Yeah.
So cardiovascular disease, sedentary lifestyle, ultra-processed foods. And by that token, grains, starches, the salt thing I say with the caveat that it's like refined table salt, sugar.
Yeah.
And then smoking. Type 2 diabetes, we're back to the sugar, the grains, starches, the processed food, the sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah.
Carrying excess weight. Cancers are an interesting one because it's essentially oxidative stress, inflammation, and, you know, cells that are not following a proper life cycle. And so depending on the type of cancer, it could be connected to the fiber or lack of fiber that we're eating. It could be connected to cigarette smoke, drinking alcohol, UV exposure, other toxins in our environment. We did an episode about breast cancer and alcohol. In looking up some of the data for this episode, the BRCA gene, it's actually like maybe 30% of breast cancer is connected to BRCA, where 70% is connected to lifestyle.
Wow. I mean, I've got a very personal connection to, unfortunately, many cancers. Cancer is extremely prevalent in my family, including my mom, who had both lung and breast cancer. You know, she was a smoker for a time in the 60s and 70s.
As was everyone.
As was everyone. And so actually her first cancer was lung cancer. She quit long before she was pregnant with my sister, who's 50. I said it. Yeah, sorry, Amy. But my dad continued to smoke in the house when we were kids, Marlboro Reds, and he has not had any sort of lung issues. And it's like, so it's really, really hard for me to wrap my head around, like, make that make sense.
Well, I think it's so confusing because the human body has this incredible way of healing itself and compensating.
Yeah.
And that's where like the individual piece of this, it is hard to wrap our head around sometime and to say, well, why this person and not that person?
Yeah. When on paper, it's like this person checks literally all the boxes to be the one, you know, best candidate for getting cancer. And yet.
Right. Well, and then we look at other parts of the world where maybe the prevalence of smoking is a lot higher than here. And yet we still have a much higher incidence of disease. And I think, I'm curious if you agree with this, I think it's the collective. It's the confluence. That's the word. It's a confluence of factors that I think a lot of those, especially in our Western world, are elevated where in other parts of the world they're not. So maybe the smoking piece is elevated in Europe. Versus here, the ultra-processed foods and the additives and sweeteners and those kinds of things are way elevated. And so it's all of these things mixed together.
Right. Yes. And maybe one day we'll know, like, what are the exact right conditions for a person to develop this disease or that disease, you know, over another person. You know, I was going to say that kind of just going back to like how can we like implement a lifestyle that doesn't feel like you're climbing Mount Everest, that it's not this huge undertaking. And I think like, unless some people have the perspective of either this blood work that comes back and says, you know, warning, warning, you're pre-diabetic or your cholesterol or whatever the markers are that are in a danger zone. And they say, ooh, okay, now I'm ready to make a change. Or they know what it feels like to make these better lifestyle choices, be it food and exercise and all of that. And they have that basis of comparison. But it's like, I think that's the hardest part for me, especially like I have 2 older stepkids and like I said, my daughter. And it's like, but don't you know how much better you'd feel and how much more energy you'd have if you exercise more or chose better food or whatever? But like, they don't know the difference.
Right. There often has to be that moment that becomes the driver to change.
Yeah.
I guess I think I'm hopeful that maybe this episode becomes that for someone listening to say,
that would be awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
To say, wait a minute, like, I don't want to develop all of these diseases. And so we'll come to, you know, all those other choices that we can make. And I think if we make them early, they don't have to feel groundbreaking.
Yep. Right.
Going back to my list of diseases before I forget. Okay. COPD, so chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, tobacco, smoking, and other air pollutants tend to be the greatest drivers. According to statistics, it's rarely purely hereditary that creates the COPD diagnosis.
Yeah.
Liver disease. We've talked about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and that's not the only liver disease that exists, but alcohol consumption, consuming a lot of sugar, metabolic dysfunction, carrying excess weight are all the lifestyle things that tend to lead to liver disease. Kidney disease, overconsumption of the processed foods, the salt, like table salt, lots of dehydration, smoking, sedentary lifestyle. Like, we're hearing a lot of these things come up over and over.
Yeah.
And essentially, like, as I was putting all of this together, I was like, I don't know if there is any organ system whose disease is not in some significant way impacted by lifestyle. Like, in my practice, I've yet to encounter a disease that can't be, even if you already have a diagnosis, I also have yet to see a disease state that can't be, even if it's the symptoms, can't be improved or impacted by lifestyle choices too.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I guess organ that came to mind was skin.
Yes.
And it's like, well, of course you can take control there, but there are some predispositions, right?
Exactly.
But like I remember like growing up, my mom was so adamant about putting sunscreen on my face every day. And it was like, this is so annoying. I don't even want to wash my face, like let alone put something on top of it.
Right.
And it's like, I'm so grateful now because I'm a fair-skinned person who burns easily. And I'm so grateful that that is something that she insisted on when we were kids.
Yeah. So like our skin is one, like our musculoskeletal system, our reproductive system. We talked about respiratory and cardiovascular, the gut, digestive system, like every gut-related disease is impacted by lifestyle. Our nervous system, the brain, our hormones, right? That's the endocrine system, like literally every single system in the body. So I've seen like the adrenals and stress, like as we go like organ systems and then even like specific organs, like everything.
Yeah.
So if something is showing up for you and you're like seeking out that diagnosis, like the diagnosis is a piece of things. The reality is more how we're getting there is a function of the things that we're doing every single day. And I mentioned this before, but inflammation. So a lot of times, and now I feel like inflammation has become this like buzzword where everyone says it. Nobody really talks about what it means. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So inflammation is technically, in terms of like body process, inflammation is the root of every symptom, illness, or disease. Acute inflammation helps us heal. So if we have a cut and there's a little bit of redness, or like if you rolled your ankle and it's a little swollen, that lasts for a short period of time, that's acute inflammation that is helping us heal.
Yeah.
Chronic inflammation is where we end up in this disease state. And essentially, chronic inflammation is oxidative stress. And I know this is like using a word to define a word. So oxidative stress is an overrun of free radicals. Free radicals are molecules with an unpaired electron that essentially, in trying to balance themselves out, steal these electrons from other molecules. And it creates this snowball effect in the body that really takes over. So if you think about, you cut an apple and leave it out and it's turning brown, that's oxidation. That's oxidative stress on the surface of the apple. Rust on a car or a swing set. I say swing set because I very vividly recall my swing set as a kid getting rusty.
Yes, and then having to try to avoid said rust.
Right. So like, but those are examples we can see of the inflammation. Yep. And I think that goes back to what you were saying of like, we can feel like something's off and it's not necessarily showing up in our blood work yet. Often that's what's happening. We're noticing the beginnings of these things happening in our system. Yep. And it takes time for that snowball to get to a place because the body is so brilliant at compensating and pulling what it needs from different places, you know, to make things happen and to still function and survive.
Yeah. I just keep thinking about, so I have been gluten-free for, about 5 years now, 5-ish years. And I'm not celiac. So I had been getting chronic sinus infections. And I got them as a kid, but I was never like a candidate to get my tonsils out. I had CT scans. Like some ENTs said, yeah, you could have a sinus surgery. Others were like, well, you probably don't need it. And I was like, well, something's up because I don't want to go on antibiotics 3 times a year. It was the only way to get rid of them. So I went to a functional medicine doctor and he ran a extensive food sensitivity test. And he said, you are as highly sensitive to wheat and gluten as a person can be without having celiac. Because like I could eat a loaf of bread and not have, I shouldn't, but I could. And my stomach is fine. Like I don't feel sick. And he was like, if I were you, I would just never touch that stuff again. And I was like, if this gets rid of, or at least minimizes my sinus infections and the recurrence of them, well, I am willing to do it. And for about 18 months, I was extremely strict. And yeah, it made a huge
world of difference, which your story reminds me too. I hesitate to call this an over-reliance, but a significant use of pharmaceuticals and antibiotics is also linked to a whole host of disease states. Yeah. And it's one of the lifestyle factors that we can choose to help mitigate disease. And I think it's ironic to some degree, right?
Right. Yeah.
And what's coming to my mind now is also vaccine preventable diseases. And I am not interested in like a whole political debate with you or the person listening. I just wanted on our radar to say that there is still a place for Western medicine and understanding that all of these things are give and a take and choosing what's going to work for us in our own lives and thinking about the things that we can do for highly preventable diseases, because stuff that we thought, was preventable was so because of vaccines. And so it's just another piece of this puzzle to sort of wrap our heads around.
Yeah. And I think like for me, going back to the antibiotics, like that really would be the only thing that could actually kick the sinus infection when I would get them. But I was more so bothered by the fact that these sinus infections would make me so fatigued for weeks and headaches for weeks. And it was like,
it takes you out of your life.
This is unsustainable. Totally. And like, I'm a very active person with a very active lifestyle. And it was like, I could not just muscle my way through it. And they would just hit me out of nowhere. And then having a kid, bring home all of the germs that she does. It's just like, I knew that probably things were only going to get worse.
Absolutely. So that's the perfect segue to bring us to the lifestyle choices that we can make that support our health rather than disease, that all the things that we can do to impact our blood work. And I even have some expectation setting that we can do around some of that blood work to say, here's how long it will likely take for this to respond. So we'll do all of that after we highlight our sponsor for this episode, BetterHelp. What we've been talking about today is potentially a breakthrough moment for you. Hopefully, you're realizing that what you thought was inevitable isn't. That the story you were told about your health doesn't have to be your story. And that kind of shift in how you see what's possible really changes everything. And for me, shifting my perspective has been one of the greatest lessons from therapy. This certainly was not something that I would likely come to on my own. And having the right support and a fresh perspective made all the difference for me. And that's why I couldn't be a bigger fan of therapy. And so BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. You take a quiz, you get matched with a licensed therapist, communicate in a way that works for you. That could be phone, video, text message. And then even if the therapist isn't a match for you, you can switch at no extra cost. Over 6 million people have gotten help through BetterHelp with 4.8 star rating out of 5 stars on the App Store. You know that you're in capable hands. Go to betterhelp.com/sideofries and get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/sideofries. And we'll put a link in the episode notes below so that you can click it. Okay. So thinking of, I think of them as like protective habits and the blood markers we can move. There's a piece of this that I think maybe overarching is to remind everybody that results are going to depend on very individual factors. So yes, your genetics are going to play into your results, your history. I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday because I have a bunch of clients who are in their 70s and 80s. And their experience, because they've sort of been living this way for a lot longer than someone who's in their 40s or 50s even, it is different. And so I think just recognizing that there is so much individual variation there, and it also is going to come down to our own willingness to make those choices, like you were saying in the beginning.
Yeah. And being your own biggest advocate, because that can mean so many different things. But like, for one, we hear the phrase listening to your body, and you need to listen to your body. But like, what does that really mean? I just had a back surgery after 15 years of really terrible back pain. And I tried everything before I resorted to ultimately what was the only thing that was going to fix it. And some of my friends are like, well, do you wish that you had now done it sooner because you feel so much better? And I'm like, no, because I needed to explore absolutely every other option before going into surgery. But like, that was me listening to my body and what I needed to feel really comfortable choosing ultimately to go to the surgical route. But I wouldn't say that that was an easy thing to come to. And I just I don't know, I'm talking in circles a little bit, but
no, I think you're totally right. Like this idea of advocating for ourselves, like I want to sort of split up this between like sort of the advocacy piece and then the listening to our body piece, because so on the advocacy front, we in the United States, the way the medical system is set up, there's still a lot of the dynamic left over from what we call healthcare 1.0, this like patriarchal doctor on a pedestal. We don't question them. We don't push back. Yeah. Versus what we're moving to when we get into value-based care and value-based reimbursement and, sort of what's coming in healthcare is what we call healthcare 3.0 and the therapeutic alliance, which means that you, the patient, are as much an expert as the physician because you are the expert in your body. and you get to drive the course of your treatment.
Yeah.
So what that might look like is saying to the doctor, I hear what you're saying about my blood work. What's your level of concern? Would you be willing to give me 12 weeks to see if I can improve this using other tools?
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of the patient advocacy work that I do, I have yet to have a client where the doctor said no to that question.
Right.
The reason why, and in the work that I do with health professionals, the reason why they don't often suggest it is a few things. One, they don't have the time or capacity to help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that most of them even know or have the tools to offer you, right? Their tool belt is pharma.
Mm-hmm.
And the other piece is that when you think about all the people that they see, they often, and I hesitating because this is such a generalization, but I've heard it so many times, but it's often the belief in the medical system that the patient won't do it.
Mm.
The one thing the patient will do is take a pill.
Yeah.
So if you go to them and say, I would like to do this, they're generally willing to let you.
Yeah.
It's not their default because also malpractice and all of these other things, that it becomes this sort of conundrum of how to improve it so that they're not liable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's that becomes a very gray area. And that would assume that they would be good coaches too.
Right.
Which is not what they're necessarily trained to do. And that's fine unless they choose to. But like you said, if the patient has the ability and the motivation to coach themselves or seek out other support or resources to help them through the process. But I just think, like you said, the doctors are seeing so many patients and they've got these benchmarks. And they say you're either in the healthy zone or you're outside of the healthy zone and don't have time to work in the gray.
Exactly. So if we think about what are those choices, what are those adjustments that we would make, they fall into a few buckets. And normally we would talk about these in terms of those buckets. Today, I have them in my notes more organized by the organ system or the disease state to some degree. So when we think of whether it's cardiometabolic or even kidney disease and liver disease, we're really looking at nutrition that is actual food. Foods that don't have labels that you need to figure out how to read. Vegetables and fruit, lean meat. You decide if that's animal or plant, because in the research, it doesn't actually matter as long as it's not highly processed. Quitting smoking, minimizing drinking. And technically, I'm probably supposed to say quitting drinking the same way we say quitting smoking because they're the same carcinogen level, basically. It's just difficult, even for me, for all of us. We enjoy a beverage. And that's where, too, going back to your dad, I think there's also this give and take of saying, we know stress plays into this. So if some of these things, what's the balance between less stress and having a thing and living in these rigid lines of the things that completely prevent a disease state?
Yeah. Oof, I feel like we could go
I know.
way on a tangent right now, but I will just dip my toe in this, thinking about maintaining a healthy lifestyle and making well-informed nutrition choices. And for a lot of people, and myself included, the pressure and the stress of choosing the food noise, if to want to use more of a buzzword, the food noise or the counting of macros and tracking everything. And there is absolutely validity to that, depending on the person, in my opinion. Yes. Speaking only for myself, I tracked and dieted for almost my entire life. And I think there was so much stress that came along with that it highly likely counteracted any of the good I was doing by cutting my calories or whatever it was. So it just can be right. The point of stress, like stress can come in so many different ways.
Absolutely. And then it goes back to knowing yourself and trusting your instincts.
Yep.
And listening to that, validating that, because you know.
Mm-hmm. You do. But it's also hard to then, be bombarded with information constantly and people's opinions that, oh, but have you tried this? Have you tried fasting? Have you tried keto? Have you tried? And it's like, well, maybe they're on to something. I mean, it's like you just have to know when to
and that's
kind of stay in your lane.
Absolutely. And that's when A, for the people speaking to stay in their lane, and B, if you're on the receiving end, decide when you're like Teflon and let the person say it because they need to say it, not because you need to hear it, and let it slide right off of you because you have your plan, you know what you're doing, you know what works for you. And if you're finding yourself sort of in that shiny object syndrome, easily influenced by every word that every person says, reach out to somebody to be that voice to help you decipher. I call it in my book, like that lens through which we see everything coming at us.
I was going to say, then that's when you sign up for your BetterHelp.
Right. That too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that too.
Okay, cancer and lung diseases. So we're thinking cellular and respiratory protective choices.
Mm-hmm.
We're back to the tobacco, back to the alcohol, back to the sun.
Yep.
Movement, breathing, oxygen, moving our bodies. And this comes, even the metabolic pieces of like liver and lung, like sitting is the new smoking. We've talked about it because, sitting all day is the thing we're doing that we don't realize is slowly killing us. And at the same time, I also say it's not human to sit all day and go berserk for an hour.
Right.
We have to find movement throughout the day as opposed to thinking of it as quote unquote working out.
Yeah. Right.
Because I think that mentality has also led us to this place of disease states.
Yes. The all or nothing, if you didn't hit it super hard, then it didn't count. Or if you can't make it for an hour, then why bother? I mean, yes, it's very extremist way of thinking. And I say that coming from owning a CrossFit gym for 10 years. So I know extremist ways of thinking.
Right.
But I was just like taking some notes because I haven't specifically mentioned that I struggled with my weight my entire life. It's something that has always been on my mind, I should say. I've always been very active and athletic and muscular and all of that. When I found CrossFit for myself, I was like, oh, this is so me. Like it just fit my personality. I loved it. I felt strong and powerful and all that. So I ended up opening a CrossFit gym, but all the while still very much struggling with my weight and how I felt. I was like, I don't feel like I look the way that I know I feel, like I'm strong and active and all of that. But a few different nutritionists or nutrition professionals or wellness professionals that I, saw during that time would suggest that I don't do CrossFit because maybe it was putting too much stress on my body and putting my body into too much of a state of oxidative stress. And it was like, gosh, I can't win.
Right.
And I think it could have very easily gotten me to the point of like, then why even work out? Luckily, I like working out because I feel good, but I've definitely had to change up the way that I work out based on how my body is responding, be it weight gain or pain or otherwise. But it's just, there's so much conflicting and competing information that I can see why people will just opt to not do anything because it's too overwhelming.
Absolutely. And that's where I think it goes back to knowing ourselves.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, either extreme is not serving us. What does the middle ground look like?
Yeah.
And figuring that out. If we even look at, because I feel like what you're talking to is also speaking to that mental piece of it.
Yeah.
So if we think about even motivation and diseases of the brain, We need antioxidants, omega-3 fatty acids, blood sugar balance, movement, and oxygen to have blood flow, to create new neurons, protein to build the neurotransmitters that create mood. We must sleep to eliminate waste. It's from the brain and our body, our liver and all of those things, managing that stress. So again, some of that activity that the body can experience as stress versus our mind experiencing stress relief. It's exploring what that balance looks like.
Right. And maybe I guess just in my specific case, during that time of my life, well, for one, I owned a CrossFit gym. I was like, well, I'm not going to stop doing CrossFit and I love it. So maybe I carry a little bit of extra weight. However, I'm still killing these workouts.
Yeah. And maybe that looks like 3 days a week instead of 6.
Yeah.
And the other days are other things. I think the other piece that group fitness for me has been such a difference maker is community and connection.
Yes.
And that, it's so interesting because that's not in the research that shows up when you look at all of these studies on these disease states. And yet it is, I know. And so I think hopefully we'll get there in time. But we do see it in longevity research. We do know whether you're going back to even some more recent episodes or the longevity equation, community and connection and purpose are so overlooked. And it's kind of going back to even what I was saying about alcohol or choosing our vices a little bit to find that stuff that really brings joy and happiness and all of the things and what your puzzle looks like between all of those pieces. Sleep, stress, hydration and minerals, quality nutrition, movement, that community and connection, and then minimizing those toxins, the alcohol, the tobacco, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I want to wrap this up with some expectation setting around our blood work. Because a lot of times, especially in my world, it comes down to a lot of these metabolic markers that people tend to be most concerned about. Insulin. When we adjust our nutrition and our movement and our sleep and our stress, all of those things, insulin tends to improve in about 2 to 8 weeks. Insulin sensitivity, I should say. A1C, HbA1c, is looking at our blood sugar over about 12 weeks. So we're going to want to retest that 12 weeks later after we've implemented these lifestyle factors. Cholesterol, specifically LDL, can drop really quickly. I have clients who see a difference even in a matter of a few weeks.
Yeah.
Because cholesterol is way more tied to sugar than it is fat. Blood pressure is highly lifestyle responsive. Again, we're talking a month, certainly a year, but we can see changes in blood work relatively quickly. If you're sitting here and going, okay, I need to see those changes in those markers, reach out. Let's have a conversation. Everything we talked about is going to improve all of those markers. And if you're saying, where do I start? What's going to be the biggest impact? That's such an individual question. So just know you're not doomed. You can talk to your physician to say, I also know that relying on medications for chronic disease come with another host of implications. Would you give me 12 weeks? Because we can see all of those move in 12 weeks.
Yeah. And you will feel better.
Yes.
You don't even know how much better you could feel.
Exactly.
I think that's the key.
Exactly. I remember when I was working with somebody years ago and fixed my adrenal fatigue, I was like, oh my goodness. I thought I had energy before. This is another level. I didn't know life could be like this.
Yeah. What are some of the changes that you made?
The one that made the biggest difference was actually black licorice root extract. A couple drops. I mean, it was instant and massive.
Huh.
Yeah.
And tasted terrible?
I don't mind black licorice.
The things we do.
Right. All right. A final thought, Leslie, something to wrap up our conversation today about highly preventable diseases and blood markers we can move.
Gosh, but I've already said so many brilliant things. I think that ultimately it all comes back to being your own biggest advocate.
Yes.
And understanding what it means to listen to your body and only listen to your body and consider the external factors weighing in, so to speak. But like, you know you best, and no one will ever know you better. So make the call, be the pest, you do the things, and just be relentless until you know that you are doing the things that you need to do.
Absolutely. It's funny. My same sort of overarching thought is like, you are in charge of your health.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we're in charge of our health is a function of, even when it comes to the big diseases, it's a function of the little things that we're doing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Showing up to your doctor, waiting for something to appear in your blood work is early detection at best, and actual prevention of disease starts now, starts in the environment that we're creating in our lives, right? Is your body hospitable to or creating disease or health?
Yeah. Ask a lot of questions.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. With that, let's preview our nutrition nuggets. So on Friday, in this week's bite-sized bonus episode, we're talking about Trader Joe's sweet and sour gummy worms. I know. So have you seen these?
Yes. Is it like a version of their sweet and sour, all the gummies?
Yes. And so I saw these on social media because no less than 5 people sent me like people's content talking about them, because these were sending people right to the bathroom.
Oh, no. Okay. I've not heard that.
To me, I was like, I wonder how connected this is to the fiber maxing trend. And in general, I just have so many thoughts. So we're going to talk about Trader Joe's sweet and sour gummy worms on Friday in this week's bite-sized bonus episode. So be sure wherever you're listening, click the plus sign or the follow button, and then your app will alert you on Friday when it goes live. Well, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideofries.com. Pick your platform, send a message. Hearing from you is the highlight of my day. I love hearing your questions, your takeaways, your ideas. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me. Leslie Boys, thank you for being here and joining me this week.
Yes. Thank you for having me. This was not surprisingly awesome.
Yes, I'm so excited. And everybody jump over to the Fitness of Business podcast too. And of course, if you are not already, become a member of the Happy Healthy Hub. You'll go to asaladwithasideofries.com/membership. This shows your support for this podcast, this community, and above all, your health. On top of access to the community board where we can interact, ask and answer questions, and so much more. You get discounts, curated content, and of course, this week's recipe for the dill pickle potato salad. So until next week, remember, you are in control of your health and health span with the choices that you make every day, because chronic diseases tend to be highly preventable thanks to our daily lifestyle choices. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.